Hello, everybody, and welcome to TTV's interview of the New York Times best-selling author of more than 50 Star Wars books, and the junior novelizations for the Indiana Jones films, as well as the current book author for the BIONICLE G2 reboot, Ryder Windham. How's it going, Mr. Windham?
Oh, hello.
You have a rather impressive list of credentials there to introduce you.
I was impressed, yes. Thank you. I'm happy to talk with you about BIONICLE.
Yes, today the subject of our talk is going to be your work on the BIONICLE G2 Generation 2 series of books and graphic novels released in 2015 and some coming out in 2016 as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this off. Now, for our audience, just a quick introduction so you know who is on this episode today. I'm Messinek.
I'm LJ.
I'm Kahi.
I'm Takuma Nuva.
And without further ado, let's do this. So, Ryder, I guess a good way to start this would just be asking, how did you first get into writing BIONICLE? Were you approached by LEGO? Did you contact them? What's the story behind that?
It's let's see. I've been a freelance writer for about 20 years now, and just I guess in brief, I used to be a comic book editor a long time ago. I worked on Star Wars and Indiana Jones comics for Lucasfilm, and it was after I left Dark Horse, it was a friend at Lucasfilm who said, "Hey, you know this material pretty well. Would you be interested in working on books?" And at the time, I'd only written I'd written scripts for a few comics, and I never aspired to becoming a writer. It's just something that happened because a friend at Lucasfilm started recommending me, and then it was a few years later, I realized, I guess I'm a freelance writer because that's what I'm doing most of the time. So, anyway, one of my first assignments as a freelancer was a series of Star Wars role-playing game books for Scholastic, and I think it was around. And my memory is a little vague on this one. It was around 2000 or 2001 that an editor at Scholastic contacted me and asked if I'd be interested in working on some Lego BIONICLE books. And she sent me some comics and also a few toys. And I kind of got up to speed. I was reading about it, and I said, yeah, sure, I'd be interested in working on it. And it totally fell through. Not just, I remember talking with the editor, and she said, well, I don't know how the decision came up, but she informed me that a fellow named Greg Farshty would be writing pretty much all the books. And I thought, well, okay. I had nothing to do with the decision. I had nothing to do, I just thought, well, okay. And at the time, I just proceeded to do more Star Wars books. So last year, I take that back. It was late 2014 that an editor at Scholastic, a different editor, Rex Ogle, contacted me and said, would you be interested in working on BIONICLE? And I said, well, yeah, I would be, but, what's the situation now? So, he assured me, he said that the folks at LEGO, that they were familiar with my work on Star Wars, and that they were hoping for me to do a reboot. And not to meander too much, but what happened next surprised me. Rex Ogle left Scholastic and went to Little Brown. And then I thought, oh man, there goes this assignment too. Fortunately, it was Michael... but my new editor at Scholastic, Michael Petronak, he came on and he assured me, he said, no, you're on this, you're going to be doing chapter books. So I was about to begin work on the first BIONICLE chapter book, and Rex Ogle contacted me from Little Brown and said, hey, I'm in charge of the BIONICLE graphic novels here. Would you be interested? And there's no conflict of interest. Everything was friendly. So, I mean, essentially, my editors, I still think of them as my guardian angels. I've never had an agent. I've never, I didn't have a foot in the door already with Lego. So that, anyway, so that's how the work came my way. It sounds, I know various freelance or various mostly aspiring writers who kind of casually hate my guts because they think it's like, well, how do you do this? How do you get this? It's like, well, it's mostly because I've been doing it for a long time, and I've made some very good connections, and fortunately, most of them remember me well. They just know it's like, okay, well, Ryder can do this, I guess. So that was how I got into Bionicle.
What a
What
story!
would you have done if you'd heard back from one of the editors and said, Greg Farshty, he got it again.
Yeah, if that had happened, I mean, it's just we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Because you'd be in jail because you murdered Greg, obviously.
Whoa.
Take my assignment, will you?
Wow.
I've never met him. I'm familiar with his work, and I'm guessing one of your next questions might be, did you read his work? And
How could
the
you have
answer is
guessed?
There goes my question.
just a guess, and because after I got the assignment, I did go online and I read. I confess I poked around some of the fan forums, and
Oh boy.
what I read. I mean, various Bionicle fans were writing. There's no way that Windham can do any good. Yeah, it's like he's not Greg Farshty. He'll never be Greg Farshty.
Ouch.
Then there were others who said, oh, wait, I've read some of his Star Wars books, and he's pretty good. I think that he'll do good work with it. And others would say, yeah, really, you think so? And then others would say, nah, can't possibly. I won't even bother reading them. I can't take any of that really personally. To me, it's really a matter of, okay, I've been given a job, and it's not just to write the book, it's to do a good job, which I hope will lead to more work, because that's what I do for a living. But when I got these assignments, I was told it's like this is a reboot where we're starting off with a new the Toa will be in a new environment. They'll be dealing with new enemies and new landscapes, and it was pretty clear that I wasn't required to read anything except for Lego had a very detailed story Bible which they had developed specifically for this, and the focus was on the new location and the new characters, so that I read that and studied it, and I responded to Lego. I asked, I don't know, good Lord, I had a lot of questions for them, and I said, I wanted to say, now I can't remember all of them, or any of them, but I mean things where I just said, how does this work, or what is I do remember an example. I watched the animated cartoons that they had on the website, on the Lego Bionicle website. One of the things I noticed in the cartoon was that the aerial view of the island, that you could see the island had 6 distinctive geographic regions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but over the course of the animation, you find out that there's this massive cataclysmic explosion, and it radically transforms the island into 6 different locations. And I thought, well, wait a moment. If you look at this, look at the beginning of this cartoon, and then look at the end of it, it seems like there's a little crater that's formed in this. But how does that work? And because also when I was reading the story Bible, it very strongly emphasized that the island was once essentially just like this large tropical. It was essentially it was sort of unified as a large tropical island, and that it was the explosion that changed everything. So the response I got from someone at Lego was, yeah, well, and now it's like now I don't want to get in trouble with Lego because I can't remember how the explanation came back to me, but it was something along the lines of, well, during the animation, we thought we really wanted to emphasize the different environments, and we thought that it would be easier if we did it this way, if we just started off with these environments. And I thought, well, does that make sense? Does that? And I'm not. And again, I never was chewing them out. I wasn't angry.
Right.
I was trying to make sense out of it, so that
Yeah.
what I came up with was the idea that that over the course of history, that even long before the destruction, that these different regions were recognized as different regions almost on a mystical level, and this tied in also that they had the oh goodness, what were they? They're the six elemental creatures. They're these ancient creatures that are almost like spirits of the island, and I said, well, wait a minute, how can there be this elemental spirit of ice in a tropical area? It doesn't make sense. But I thought, well, it's like maybe if it's maybe there's some things about the history of the island that it's maybe at earlier times, maybe I tried to work with what I had and tried to make sense of it as I went along, and Lego was really supportive. I mean, when I asked them questions, I mean, they seem to trust. It's like, oh, we get it. Ryder's trying to, he's trying to figure this out, and so anyway,
I knew I wasn't crazy.
No.
It's a good thing too, because let me tell you, people in the Bionicle community will rip it to shreds to try and analyze every possible little thing. So the fact that you're actually thinking it through is good.
It is quite,
it's very
quite
good.
welcome.
Yeah,
That's
I knew
part
I
of
wasn't
our
crazy.
shaky
We
stuff,
had this discussion before about the whole ice, and it was all nice and pretty before, but then all these different elemental regions came in because the bios for the elemental creatures stated when the island was created, they all popped up.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any ice before.
That's very interesting.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
what's the next question we have? LJ, do you want to ask the next one?
Yes. So, writing the story, going off of the story Bible, as I understand it, you had certain creative liberties that you were given that you could kind of work with, naming certain characters, giving them names, identities, as well as giving them certain genders. Now, in the first book, it was revealed that, is it Corgo or Corgot, by the way?
That's an excellent question. I just type it. I don't. I always thought of it as Corgot, and yeah, as far as the liberties, I mean specifically on the protectors, that wasn't I guess sort of a retroactive liberty because Lego and the book editors, they didn't say, okay, we want you to develop new names and indicate genders for these characters. What happened with the protectors was I just looked at this list of names and pictures, and I thought, okay, for example, the protector of Corgot was a protector of Earth.
Yeah.
So that initially it was simply the protector of Earth, and I thought, I anticipated, well, when I write these stories, if I have the Toa of Earth saying, "Protector of Earth, come help me,"
Right.
that. Because I was thinking of it for for the comic books as well, or the graphic novels. Just anticipating, I thought, why don't these characters have individual names the same way that the Toa have individual names? It just struck me as practical. Mm-hmm. So I presented a list of names, of suggested names, and I scoured. I was thumbing through different foreign language dictionaries. Easily a dozen different languages, and I was scavenging just fragments of words and combining them so that the Kor, somewhere I have a notation as far as where did Korgot come from. Was it just something I made up, or was it something that was derived from maybe two different languages? I can't remember, but I do. But when I presented the list, Lego came back with, okay, can you give us three alternatives for each of the protectors, three names so we can choose?
Whoa.
Yes, I do that. So I created a second list. They read through them, and when I was, and they made the ultimate final decision. I mean, they chose the names that I came up with, and from the list that I drew up, and with how to put this, I am the father of two daughters. And although they are now in their teens and they don't play with toys much anymore, that I guess I'm just maybe I am thoughtful about the idea that girls play with Bionicle too.
Mm-hmm.
That I took it entirely on myself. I just thought I think. There's something strange to me, the idea that there's only one Toa who's female. I think one of the protectors should be female. At least one of the protectors should be female too.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was astounding for the community.
And so anyway, when I looked at the characters, and what I also did was I looked at what was online for the on the Lego Bionicle website. I read all the information that was online on screen. You could read about the protector of Earth, the protector of ice, etc. And there were a few of them. I mean, the website indicated that a few of them were male because it said he has this weapon or he can do this. But there were also, a few characters where no gender was indicated, and one of them was the protector of Earth, that it was just left vague. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, okay, you've got this really sort of bulky character who, I don't know, broad-shouldered, strong character. Yeah, why not make Korgot a female? And there was no resistance. I mean, the Lego said, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds great. I mean, they totally supported it. And it wasn't until I think after the first book had come out, I again, I scoped out the fan forums because I'm curious. Do they still hate me? Do they? Does anyone like what I did? I'm curious. So I go on, and I saw that there were some people who thought it was a great idea. A few were quibbling and saying, "Wait a moment! I thought that only
blue.
It was like the water or the jungle characters. I thought only they could be female." I said, I don't know. All I know is that this is what I proposed, and Lego approved it. It's like that. There wasn't any conspiracy. There wasn't. I wasn't trying to trample on things that had been done before. It was just sort of a matter of, I read the material that was given to me, and I tried to make a decision that I hoped would please some, if not all, fans.
I think the majority really enjoyed it because the prior precedent was that only the blue characters. It didn't matter what was going on, the setting, the location. Only the blue characters could be female up until 2009, and even then they didn't really change it. So you picking not only a non-blue character, but just any of the protectors at all,
I think it was a good
things
decision.
out of the water for people.
Yeah, most people.
Well, it was also. I also thought. It's something that I emphasized when I wrote to the editors and to the very nice folks at Lego. I said, it would if I were to make the protector of water a female character, I said that would just be the obvious choice. Like, oh great, the two female characters, they get to go together. And I thought, it just seemed like almost ghettoizing it somehow. I mean, or putting them in a niche that it struck me as condescending if I were to do that. And I thought, why not have a strong female character who's paired with a male character? To me, it just made sense. So, so anyway, there you have it. I'm a feminist.
Well, hey.
Well, I think it worked out for the best.
Oh, good.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most reception I've seen has been positive.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character in the books?
That's a good question. It's the kind of question my daughters will ask me. Hey, Dad, we'll watch a movie. Who was your favorite character? and it seems like more often it's not so much the individual character, it's the relationships of characters that I find interesting. It's like if I'll just make an analogy with Star Wars and say, R2-D2 is in part as interesting as he is because of C-3PO, and similar, it's like Han Solo is a cool character, but with Chewbacca, he's a really cool character. It's so just that kind of with Bionicle. It's funny. It's like I'm struggling to think of, was there any one that I enjoyed more than others? And I think oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I like the Protectors. I thought the Protectors, to me, were in many ways more interesting than the Toa. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because the Protectors, they're familiar with their island, and they are trying to protect their island. And the Toa, as the heroes who show up, I mean, they have their powers. They can they're certainly very strong. But I think that with the Protectors, there's more. I just felt that there was more potential for an emotional capacity, I guess, somehow. Mm-hmm. That they were very the threat to their island was just a threat to their legacy or their family. It was a threat to their families. Mm-hmm. And the Toa, it's like they're brave and they're helpful and they're resourceful, but that it's not as if they have family on that island. They can create bonds and they can. I found the Protectors. I did find them interesting. They're like the underdogs, I guess. They intrigued me.
Well, I quite liked the second book that was all about the Protectors. I think that was a good decision to make them the protagonists of that book.
Well, that was my decision. It was, and part of it too was that. I can't remember, because I don't even remember exactly what order I worked on the books, because I did, I think there were 3 chapter books and 2 of the graphic novels, and they all kind of staggered. It's like, or they were overlapping, or I was working on two at the same time. And that, with the first chapter book, essentially the goal on that one, I was told, it's like, okay, Lego wants this book to strongly tie in with the animated cartoons and it's to introduce these characters. And the same thing with the first graphic novel. It's like, okay, we want to introduce these things. So I realized it's okay, there will be some redundancy. There will be, readers are going to get sort of maybe somewhat similar information. So then it becomes a challenge. How can I do this differently? How can I make, instead of you focusing on the animated cartoons, the initial animated cartoons really focused on Tahu. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, let's shift to some of the other characters and just see how they interact with their new environment. Man, am I on a ramble? Yeah, the writing them, I can't remember just like what affected the decision, but I thought in order to write, so I thought rather than just having the Toa going around having adventures, fighting skull spiders, that a good way to make the reader care about all of the characters, including the Toa, is to give them a better understanding of the island, the history of the island, the protectors, and how they I don't know, had been protecting the island for many generations. So it seemed like an opportunity to tell an adventure story with a sense of history. And even though the history is completely fictional, it's still, the challenge is, okay, try to make the reader care about these little robotic characters. So, right. It was a lot of fun.
This place was important before the Toa showed up, basically.
Exactly. Right.
All right. Kai, you can ask the next question.
Okay. All right, sure. Well, I had some questions, and I know it's been a bit of a while since you've sat down to the Bionicle spec, so I understand it might be a bit fuzzy. But I have some questions specifically concerning the book. One of the things that we were kind of wondering about, because it was mentioned on the website for Bionicle, and it has not been anywhere else, and I don't know how it was conveyed, but the website seems to mention that there are certain masks that had powers attached to them, like some of them, what they refer to as a mask of strength on the website. That was a proponent of like the old Bionicle, where all of them had all the characters had a mask that had an additional power, and in G2 in the reboot they mostly have like elemental masks. But can you remember anything about that? About protectors having masks that had additional powers or something like that?
Good gosh. I remember having lots of questions about the masks, specifically. I'm wondering how many masks are on the island, or how that
right.
The whole idea. The mask makers there were things that were initially baffling to me, because I thought. I should stress that the story Bible that I first read, Lego's own story Bible, it was a constant work in progress. It seemed like every several weeks or a few weeks or so, I'd get these updates that they were adding things, modifying it, expanding it, because they were the story Bible. I guess it began so that they were covering. There are things about the toys and information that would be released over the course of 2015, and then also there were things that were more secretive for 2016. And right. So I was kind of slowly figuring out. So for an example, when I first began working on. I guess it was the very first chapter book. I was completely unaware of the ancient spirit creature, or the elemental creatures, which initially I think were referred to as elemental spirits, and then they were referred to as elemental creatures. So I was like, wait a minute. Again, like how far back does this go? Like when. So that's when I started getting confused again. Like how does this work? And it's I got the impression that Lego was sometimes they were maintaining their secrecy, or their for security, for keeping information close, but in some cases I think they were also just finding new opportunities where they thought, oh, this would be interesting as part of a backstory. And I didn't always quite understand how everything meshed, and from the correspondence that we had, I'm not always sure that they knew exactly how it meshed either. That they were just thought, okay, we think we think this has a good opportunity for a toy. And I'd say, yeah, but I'm the one who has to write about it. you have,
Right.
It's one thing to put, 2 short sentences on a toy package or on a, on the website, something to describe a character. But I said, I'm not Mr. Know-it-all, and I'm not a mind reader. I'm just trying to figure out how to make this thing, how to make all these story aspects sound real, I guess, and somewhat logical. So, again, I have digressed, but that for working on the story, yeah, I can't remember all the details, but that, it's just to understand it was a work in progress as I was the story Bible. I was getting new information while I was working in the books, so sometimes it was an effort to try to tie up loose ends that I didn't even know existed until I was almost done with the book.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, no, that
I got
definitely
what you're
makes
saying.
sense.
Yeah.
But did I answer your question? I'm not sure I did.
Okay, kind of,
Even
but
I-
I mean, you answered enough of where the question would come from, or like how's this going to get answered in the future.
It's constantly a work in progress, which is fun.
Right.
Yeah. Takuma?
Okay, so is this going to be the last question, or
I don't know.
I know we're running long.
How are you running on time, sir?
I think I could go for another 10 minutes or until my dog starts barking at me.
Okay.
Okay, so the Skull villains thus far haven't got a whole lot of screen time, and we don't really know much about, like, as far as who they actually were before they were dead, or where they came from. Is there anything you can share about that?
Not much, because I sort of took a lot of the information I just took as at face value of what the information I was given, that the one thing that came up, and here it's like I forgive me, I don't even know. I'm not even sure which books are out yet, or if I'm
2.
I can't remember. There was some. It was it was one of the villains who was introduced, because if you watch the initial run of episodes that of the animated cartoons, and it leads up to Akimu is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that
Akimu,
right.
that's correct.
I can't remember. Akimu, he's revived, and it's just the pace of the story that you get these various characters. There's the or various enemies. There's the Lord of Skull Spiders.
Yes.
There's the Skull Crusher. There's the Skull Grinder. And I was trying to. The thing that surprised me and concerned me too was that it seemed like most of these characters were rather quickly dealt with. That they just seemed to be, it's like sort of, like, okay, that one's down. Now this one. Now that one.
Right.
And so. But one of the things that occurred to me was that Lego likes to keep characters alive, which is so that at first I'm reading the script, and it seems kind of clear to me that the Lord of Skull Spiders has just been sent plummeting into this chasm, and I'm thinking, I guess that's dead. Oh no, not necessarily. Lego tells me, he could still be alive. And the same thing with these other villains. So that as far as at first I thought, well, maybe these skull creatures, as far as where do they come from, I don't know, but maybe they have the power to simply revive bones, so if there are deceased characters, buried bionicle characters, it's like, well, I guess it's kind of a zombie-like thing. I had all sorts of questions about, because if you look at the toy package art, it doesn't really seem clear about, okay, so because I couldn't understand, do the skull spiders steal the masks of the islanders and then jump over the character's head, the bear,
Right.
and take over, or do they jump over the masked character's entire masthead and like to control the characters? And Legos, they sort of go back and say, oh, well, it could work this way, or it could work that way. And I realized, okay, it's like there's a sort of a flexible thing where they're looking at it from a perspective of, it's kids playing with toys and being imaginative with it. And I'm thinking, I don't mean to sound so rigid, but I think, for a narrative story, it needs some kind of rules to.
Right.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So, anyway, I can't, I don't remember, some super specific descriptions of like where did the skull creatures come from, but there is a villain, and I don't mean to give anything away because I don't think the book is. I think it's in the third chapter book, but that it's essentially it hints, I think, at the origins of how the skull-oriented enemies arrived on the island.
Interesting. I look forward to it.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong about that, you'll have to see me in court.
Fair enough. The main reason the Skull villain history is even a question is because there were a couple lines in the first book where Ikimu was like, for the final two Skull villains introduced, he was like, they call him Skull Basher, or they call him Skull Grinder, and the question was raised by the community, well, who is they?
Who's they?
Oh, I asked that question too. I did. I do remember asking that question and said, like, how does he know? He's been asleep for how many years and generations? And yeah, there were various things like that where I thought I did question. How does Akimu know this? Who is he talking about right here?
Right.
So it's
Fair enough.
okay.
Well, the next question I have, switching gears a little bit from the Skull villains, moving into the second chapter book. There was the period at the end of the book where the protectors meet up with Akimu, who's already been awoken, and he calls them by different names, the names of the original protectors, not their current ones. Well, in the book, first of all, I'll say that was very, very excellent that you put those in there for the slightest little extra bit of, I suppose, world building, knowing those older names of the protectors.
But yeah, just having extra.
The problem
names,
is,
that's really nice having one
in the book, it's not made apparent which one is which for which elemental protector. So I was curious if that was something that you knew or had written down anywhere, or if that wasn't necessarily relevant for the scene, so you never gave it much thought.
No, you know what? I'm sure I gave it some thought in that, and that as far as like trying to keep the dialogue flowing and conversational. My best guess is, because I don't have the books in front of me, but I'm guessing that if you were to read the lines so that, as Akimu greets all the characters by name in a specific order, he says, hello, dopey, grumpy, happy, sleepy, etc. Okay, he says their names. But there's also either, just before that statement or right after where, he looks up and he sees them. I think I'm pretty sure that I arranged, some, in close proximity to his statement, that if you read and it's like, you see, it's like, no, he's looking at, and you feel that the names of the protectors or the contemporary protectors, I think I put them in the same order. So that I hope that makes sense. Just that I'd have to read it again. If you want me to type something up, I'll take a look.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
It would be pretty excellent.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that. Actually, the second graphic novel. Spoilers. The second graphic novel features the ancient protectors.
Oh.
So that
Makes sense. It's been confirmed it's a flashback novel, so...
Right, but now I'm also wondering, I'm pretty sure I identify them all by their ancient names. It's like
Well, hey.
But I also was thinking, especially for very young readers, I thought I don't want this to be baffling to them. I want them to be entertained and all. But yeah, I can. So anyway, I know that while I was working on the books and the comics, that I was able to distinguish the ancient protectors from the contemporary protectors by name. I mean, at the time, I remembered all of them, and it's been months now, and sadly, my memory is increasingly like a sieve when I'm not working on anything. It's just like, oh yeah, I wrote that. Yeah, I don't get paid to remember all that. I get paid to
Right, exactly. If you were the trivia master, then you would have all this down. But
exactly. Right. So, but yes, I did. Yeah, there are. The names were not arbitrary. I mean, for the ancient protectors, each one does have a specific name.
All right, then.
Sweet.
Well, excellent.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Do you have time for one more question, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, who wants to ask the last question, and which should it be? Let's figure this out.
Can I take a shot?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Well, I have a question. Did you have one of the things important for like a lot of the fans going forward with G2 is the kind of the culture and all the like the villagers and how they live their lives and all that kind of stuff there. Did you have any like concepts for cool stuff about how they lived in the world that they lived in, and that just never was able to be put into a book or found its way into a book? But did you ever think of, any cool things you could just, let people know about, or, cool ideas that you just didn't find time or space to put into a book somewhere?
I don't recall having, the only thing I remember was from watching the cartoon, the animated cartoon. I think it was the opening one that introduces the new island, and you see some islanders, the little robotic creatures, and some of them are fishing.
Right.
And there's like, I think some are sitting up on pylons, and they have rods with string that extends to the water, and that just made. I remember asking, so. Do they eat food?
That's a good question.
Do they catch fish? What do they do with the fish? Do they eat them? Do they use the bones for tools? Are they fishing for food? Like, what's going on with that?
Right.
And I don't remember the answer exactly, except that it seemed that the emphasis was that these are sort of living, organic, bionic creatures, and that so it seemed like they could eat, they could consume food, but it seemed like I thought it sort of, I don't know, it struck me as something that I was just going to let go. I mean, as opposed to, okay, we're going hunting for food tonight. I just
right.
It didn't seem to me like. I don't know. I was kind of comfortable more with the idea that they just, got their energy somehow as they needed it. I wasn't really too concerned about that.
There was a recent large debate on one of our podcast episodes about how Matoran eat, specifically in Generation 1 of Bionicle, where they absorb energy through their hands. So
that was a big thing, where it's like they would eat through their hands and not through their mouths, and we're like, how does that work? Can it be done with anything? Is it like...
Yeah, I'd much prefer if they just ate with their mouths, like regular people.
I was going to say... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, too, given the masks and how that covers their mouths, I remember asking, like, when, if they eat, do they have to remove their masks to do?
Right.
It struck me as kind of odd, but... so anyway, I'm sorry. Who has a question?
Oh,
I don't remember what it was anymore. Don't worry about it.
Amazing.
Well, that's all right. Yeah, we were just talking about that too. I know, like Harvali in the second book, she makes note of like how there were edible plants, and that's how she was able to. Like, she insinuated that's how she was able to be alive. But it was still a thing where like do they eat with their mouths now? Or is that can we see that
I'm
for certain?
guessing. I'm guessing they do. I mean, the cartoon. I use the animated cartoons really as. I mean that as well. The cartoons, along with the story Bible and the Bionicle website. Those were my. That was my source material. So that there are scenes where characters have their masks removed, and you can see they have mouths. They're talking. They're.
Right.
So I thought, okay, it seems to work. Oh, I just remembered actually something that did baffle me, and forgive me, I can't remember who asked about, the other masks and what, like additional masks. I know that, it seemed that masks, from what I remember from the story Bible, that the mask makers produced many masks. That they produced, it wasn't just masks for the protectors, but for other characters as well. And as far as giving specific powers, it seemed, I think that there was. I mean, the whole idea that that the mask makers could, the masks that were produced weren't merely ornamental; that they were celebrated. The masks were celebrated and recognized for, the mystical powers that came with them. But it was. I remember having, really being baffled. Here's one to consider. That the animation, the cartoons establish that when the Toa arrive on the island, that they have to go and search on these quests for golden masks. So it made me think, it's like, well, wait a minute. The masks, it seems, were specifically made for them. And then there's this whole, the prophecy of the Toa, of that someday these people, but the prophecy of the Toa, if you watch the cartoons, the prophecy is first mentioned essentially by Akimu's spirit. Right. After, it's like after the cataclysm, the protectors gather around his lifeless form, and they hear this prophecy that the Toa will come. Okay, so then they realize, wait a minute, we have to backtrack now, because prior to the cataclysm, that's when Akimu made the masks. How did he know something bad was going to happen?
Right.
Okay, so it seems like so even before the protectors knew about the prophecy, it seemed Akimu knew something bad was going to happen, and he anticipated that by constructing masks that would eventually help save the island. But again, it's like when I'm reading the way I just explained it that way, that was never indicated in the story Bible. It's like I was trying to piece together the sort of the history of the thing, and I type up in chronological order. Okay, so these things happened, and then this happened, and it was. It was an interesting. I enjoyed working on the project. It was sometimes baffling to me, but I liked the challenge of it. I mean, and I appreciated that Lego and the editors that it was very collaborative. I mean, that they would say, I think the one thing that I thought might have been interesting to explore, and it did get shot down immediately, was the idea of sort of a, not exactly time travel, but more like suggesting the possibility of a temporal loop of sorts. And because I thought there was something about how the island, they were anticipating the coming of the Toa. And I thought maybe it's sort of like to bridge the gap with the previous Bionicle series. I thought, what if the Toa, it's not just like they're not just on an ongoing series of adventures. What if they're on this odd loop where maybe they might be stuck where they've gone from one place to another, and the reason that this prophecy exists is that very ancient islanders, maybe the Toa have been there before, but that information was lost to time. And so I mean, as I try to explain it, I wrote up a short synopsis for how I thought it could work, and the response from Lego was, "No, that's too complicated." And I said, "That's fine." It's like it was something I knew. I was never hell bent on seeing it happen. I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this would make it so much better." It was never about that. I thought, this might make it more interesting. What do you think? And they said, "Well, we think it's too complicated." And I said, "Okay." It's like, no, absolutely, didn't mean to waste your time. Like, no, we get that. So, no, that was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I suppose we should probably wrap up there. To be honest, I have my final thing I will ask is to close this interview. We currently have release dates for chapter book 3, as well as graphic novel number 2 and number 3. My question is, can we expect anything after that, or has your work with the Bionicle theme wrapped?
What can you say?
Or can you even say?
Well, to be, if there's a third graphic novel, that's news to me because I didn't write it. But it's like I don't know. I don't know what's beyond that. If there are more opportunities to write for Lego and specifically for Bionicle, the editors and everyone at Lego, they know I'd be honored and delighted to do more. But I mean, for right now, I don't know of anything beyond the work that I did. So yeah, I don't know. Just one other thing occurred to me that that you'll find in, I think it's mentioned in the chapter books. I know it comes up in the graphic novels that Ekimu has an airship, or there will be references to it. And the way that came about was because when I was reading the books, I just thought, I wish I could get these characters around the island faster. So when I pitched the idea of, I said, like, would it be possible that maybe there's like an ancient airship or something? I said, yeah, that could work. And again, I just mentioned that as like an example of that Lego and the editors, that they were just receptive to things. I mean, that to ideas that they, which was part of the fun of the project. I mean, that it was, I had to work within various constraints, but that, they still, they encouraged the imagination, or my imagination as well. And that was fun. I mean, it was a pleasure to work on.
Well, excellent. I certainly hope that you will be asked to create more in the future, because the books so far, with the animations, the online animations, they were excellent, and we have had the privilege to talk with the screenwriter for those animations as well in the past. But it's been said numerous times, they were short, they were 1.5 minutes long, they did not have the necessary time to provide many details for world building. The books and the graphic novels have filled that role pretty wonderfully, and we've learned a lot through your intervention with the theme and the questions that you've asked and the things you took it upon yourself to create that we may not have known otherwise. And it's helped to make this a little bit better of an experience.
Well, it occurred to me, I did read, someone asked me, I got a message about, someone said, like, oh, you've got, the protector of jungle has a tail.
Ah, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, but from the toy has the tail is on the character's heels on his feet. And like, you've got it going off the spine of the character. And I read that, and it wasn't until I read that message that I remember clearly asking Lego, because I found out about the tail by way of the website where they had pictures of the toys, And it's like, but they just have, I think it's just like a picture of the tail. It's not even attached to the character.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
yes. It was just the individual piece.
And if you watch the animated cartoon, which I did, I said, look, the character, Protector of Jungle, I don't see any tail on that character. And it's like, oh, no, it's off his spine. It comes off. So I didn't mean to screw up. It's like I wrote the way I did at the time because it was my understanding. It was a tail, a singular tail that came off his spine.
Yeah, normal tails do come off the spine. That's not exactly.
No one really talks about the tails that come off the.
It's not exactly a grievous mistake to make.
Right.
Okay. All right. So all is forgiven.
Right. Exactly. But can confirm the tail is off his spine, and
that's how I wrote it. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that's how it'll be.
Fantastic.
All right then.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming on. It
thank
was
you.
a pleasure to talk.
Thank you.
yeah.
Maybe we can do this again in the future at some point.
That would be fun.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening to TTV's interview with the Bionicle 2015 and 2016 book and graphic novel author Ryder Windham. Please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And, well, I suppose we'll see you all for the next video. I'm Messina.
I'm LJ.
I'm Kahi.
I'm Takuma.
And thank you very much for listening. Goodbye, everyone.